All right, let's jump right into it. Today we're talking about two things you probably never thought you'd hear in the same breath. A Silicon Valley titan and, believe it or not, the Antichrist. Yeah, this one gets a little weird, so let's unpack it.
So this is the big question, right? Why on earth is one of the most powerful people in tech giving secret, off-the-record lectures about the Antichrist? I know, it sounds totally bizarre, but it's apparently a real thing. And figuring out why, well, that might just uncover a hidden worldview that's quietly shaping the technology you and I use every single day.
Okay, so here's the deal. We're diving into a series of private talks, lectures really, reportedly given by the tech billionaire Peter Thiel. And just to be clear, this is not your standard keynote about the next big app. Nope, we're talking about really deep, heavy stuff. Philosophy, theology, the works.
Now, before your imagination runs wild, let's get one thing straight. He's not talking about some literal dude with horns and a pitchfork. No. The sources say that for Thiel, Antichrist is a metaphor. It's a symbol for a very specific kind of threat. A global, one-size-fits-all system that looks peaceful on the surface, but achieves that peace by stamping out all our differences.
And that's why we should care about this. I know it sounds super abstract, but these aren't just the random thoughts of some professor in an ivory tower. This is the philosophy of a person with immense power. We're talking about ideas that are directly linked to some of the biggest, most influential companies on the planet. So let's just take a second to map out that power. You know, to really get why these ideas matter, you have to see how far his influence actually reaches, how one person's thinking can literally design the digital world we all inhabit.
And honestly, the resume is kind of mind-boggling. He co-founded PayPal, which completely changed online payments. He was the first outside investor in Facebook. Think about that. He helped build the social media landscape. Then he co-founds Palantir, this huge, secretive data analysis firm working with governments. Oh, and on top of all that, he's a massive political player.
So, you see, his fingerprints are all over the backbone of the internet and data analysis. When someone who has basically been an architect of our digital world has a very specific, very unusual philosophy, it's probably a good idea to pay attention, because those ideas might just be getting built into the code.
All right, so we've established the who and the why it matters. Now, let's get into the what. Let's actually decode the core argument he's reportedly making in these lectures.
And it turns out the key to understanding this entire worldview, it all comes down to the work of one French philosopher, René Girard. His ideas are basically the engine driving this whole train of thought. So Girard's big thing is something called mimetic theory. And it sounds complicated, but the core idea is actually pretty simple. It says that we humans, we aren't that original. We don't just want things out of the blue. We copy what other people want. You know, I want that because they want that. And this copying, this mimesis, is what leads to rivalry, jealousy, and ultimately, conflict. Okay, stick with me, because this theory then builds into a 4-step critique of the modern world. Step 1, we copy each other's desires. Got it? Step 2, this copying creates conflict because now we all want the same stuff. Step 3, and this is the wild part. In ancient times, people solved this by ganging up on a scapegoat, right? They'd blame one person, get rid of them, and restore peace. But Christianity came along and exposed the scapegoat as innocent, which kind of broke that whole mechanism. So that leads to step 4. Now, in our modern world, we don't have that old release valve, so the conflict just keeps building and building, becoming global and endless. And that brings us back to the Antichrist. See? In this worldview, it's not a person. It's a system. It's the ultimate endgame of all this copied desire, a global machine that promises peace, but is actually the biggest, most hidden conflict of all. So yeah, that's a pretty bleak view of the world, right? But here's the most important question. If you believe all that, what do you do about it? How does this philosophy actually translate into action in the world of tech and business? I mean, think about it. If you're convinced that society is a runaway train headed for a cliff of endless conflict, what's your move? How do you even begin to hit the brakes? Well, within this whole theological framework, there's an answer. It's a concept called the katachon. It's a Greek word, and it literally means the one who withholds or the restraining force. In the Bible, it's whatever is holding back the apocalypse, putting a pause on total chaos. It could be an empire, a government, some kind of powerful institution. And boom, this is where the theory hits the real world.
If your philosophical goal is to find or build a modern-day Kachon, a force to hold back the chaos, what would that look like? Well, the source material suggests a pretty direct line to a company like Palantir, a firm that gives governments and law enforcement these incredibly powerful tools to monitor and control things. Is that the modern restraining force? That's the powerful idea being floating.
Okay, let's pull back for the big picture. What are we really looking at here? It's this wild mix of ancient theology, dense philosophy, and super advanced technology, all wrapped up into one ideology. And it's important because, well, the ideologies of powerful people tend to shape our future.
Look, the big takeaway here is that this isn't just some weird academic hobby. This is a complete, coherent worldview. It's a lens that sees globalization not as progress, but as a dangerous path to conflict. And it sees powerful, sovereign forces as the only thing that can pump the brakes. You could almost call it an operating manual for shaping the 21st century.
So let's recap the highlights. You've got one of tech's biggest players who reportedly views the world through this deep, theological lens. Modernity, in this view, isn't progress. It's just conflict speeding up. His real-world actions could be seen as a hunt for a restraining force. And honestly, it provides a whole new way of thinking about why some powerful people are so skeptical of globalization.
Which, of course, leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. When the people who are literally building our future are working from a blueprint that's thousands of years old, what does that mean for the rest of us? Are we seeing the secret logic that will define the next century? Or are these just the fascinating private ideas of one incredibly powerful man? That's a question we'll all have to figure out.